Seeing as we're working with an HTML file, it's probably a good idea to spend a few minutes doing a review maybe of HTML, because again, I'm not really sure where you are sort of in your learning path. So here goes. We're going to do a quick down and dirty overview of HTML. So the first thing that I'm going to do inside index.html is I'm going to get rid of my name. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to type in open angle bracket, HTML, close angle bracket. And then what I'll do is I'll hit enter a whole bunch of times, give myself lots and lots of space, type in open angle bracket / HTML, close angle bracket, just like this. I'm sure you've seen this in your travels. Maybe you weren't too sure exactly what it is, but in any regard, there we go. We have that. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cursor back up towards the top somewhere, maybe the second or third line down. And what I'll do is I'll type in open angle bracket, HEAD, head, and then close angle bracket. Then what I'll do is I'll move down a couple of lines and then open angle bracket / HEAD. There we go, something like that. And then one more time, we'll go down a few lines and then open angle bracket and we'll type in body, close angle bracket, and then all the way down towards the bottom, just above the last instance of HTML, we'll type in open angle bracket / body, close angle bracket. There we go, something like that. Now, what the heck is all this gibberish? Well, this is the basic raw structure for every single HTML page. Now, how it works is you could think of this as containers inside containers. So in other words, we have one single massive container called HTML. We can see where that container begins, and we can also see where that container ends, as indicated by the / right there. Inside this HTML container, we have two smaller containers. We have a head container, which has a starting point and an ending point. And we also have a body container, which also has a starting point and an ending point. That's how that works. Now, I've introduced you to what is referred to in HTML as an element or elements. Now, what the heck is an element? Well, elements provide structure for your pages. Think of it as, you've seen a building under construction and you see all the iron girders and the beams and all that kind of stuff. That's HTML. That's the raw structure, if you will, for the building or for our document here. So we have one single massive container or box that has two smaller boxes inside it. Now, how these guys actually work is the head container would contain things like maybe some metadata, maybe the page title, and eventually our internal CSS rules. Now, I'll get into that conversation in just a little while, but that would appear inside our head area. And then anything that appears inside the body area would actually show up inside the web browser. So only content that shows up or appears inside the body shows up inside the browser. That's how that works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to type this out here for you. So we have this thing in HTML called an element, and it's providing structure. That's the basics there. So any object on your page would have to be defined as an element. For example, images or paragraphs, maybe layout components, headings, things like this. Those are all elements, okay? And the other aspect of HTML that we have is something called attributes. Now, what an attribute is a further description of an HTML element. So, for instance, you might have an attribute for your paragraph to perhaps provide a little bit of formatting for your paragraph. For instance, changing the alignment of your paragraph. So, elements have specific attributes that we can apply to them. I'm going to show you a quick example. So, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my file, Control or Command S. I'll flip back over to my browser and refresh, and there's my document. Now, what's interesting to note here is that the white space has collapsed, as you can see. So inside my HTML file, it looks like I have two lines, but they're not defined as two lines inside the code, so the browser just renders them as they are. But if I come in here and I throw in another HTML element, perhaps a paragraph, so just before the word element, I type in open angle bracket, P, close angle bracket. And then after the word structure, I type in open angle bracket / P, close angle bracket. So then I just ended the paragraph. By the way, most, but not all elements have an opening tag and a closing tag. most but not all. And then what I'll do is I'll repeat that for attributes, just like this. So what I'm doing is I'm telling the browser that I actually want two separate paragraphs, just like this. Control S or Command S, flip back over and refresh, Control or Command R. So there we go. That's how that works. Now, back to attributes, though. How does that work? Well, an attribute would appear inside the element's opening tag. So for instance, I'm going to click just after the P in the opening paragraph tag. I'll put in a space, and then I'll throw in an attribute like a line. Now, attributes are always coded in the same way. It would be the name of the attribute equals, and then in quotes, some sort of a value, like maybe I'll change the alignment to center. So go ahead and save that up, back over to the browser and refresh, and now we have center alignment happening here. So this is a very, very basic general idea of how HTML works. Again, the intention here is that it's a review. You have your elements, you have your attributes. Here's another quick attribute for you. We could do inside the opening body tag, BG color equals, and then in quotes, some kind of a color, like maybe red. There we go. Save, back over to the browser and refresh. Whoa, there's some red happening there. Now, there are specific attributes for each element, and knowing what the attributes are and knowing how they work is really sort of the trick to working with HTML. And I should say as well that many attributes have been replaced with CSS equivalents, and using CSS is a much more elegant way to, for instance, center a paragraph or change the background color for your page. So there we go. I hope that makes sense. Our brief review, our brief overview of HTML. Again, it's all about elements and attributes.